The reason I titled it Build and Destroy is because the purpose is to build up the community and destroy the lies and propaganda that are centered around our community. So thank you for tuning in. This is a podcast. And the reason I tell you every week it's a podcast, because I get a lot of people telling me I missed your show. With a podcast, that is utterly impossible. And I reiterate that on a weekly basis to make sure the people who tune in, if you cannot stay tuned in, if something comes up, you can always come back to the show. You can come back to Spreaker.com. You can either go to any podcast platform that you use on a regular basis. If you don't, you can find us on YouTube at Build for This Network Radio. You can find us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Castbox, Deezer, and Podcast Addict. Or you can simply follow the group. It's Build and Destroy on Facebook. I'll let you in. Send me a message. I'll let you in, and then I post the links every time I post a show. Thank you for tuning in. It is important that I thank you, because without you, I'm just a guy talking to myself. Each show starts with me acknowledging my ancestors. I do that because it was taught to me that in the event that you're publicly speaking, if you acknowledge your ancestors and send up respect to them, you get blessings and protection sent back down to you. So I start each one of my shows with that. Acknowledging the family that's related to me, living and who have transitioned, who are part of the Whitmore family, the Pollard family, the Turner family, the Battle family, the Cotton family, the Harper family, the Bailey family, the Chris family, the Lansdowne family, the Liggins family, the Duncans family, and me and my brothers, my sisters, my mothers, my fathers, my grandparents out of Williams clan. We in the building. It's been an interesting week, and what I'm going to do this week, I'm going to do something to step out of the norm. I'm going to enter the phone number to the show. I don't really do that a lot. I got a feeling I'm going to regret it, but I'm going to go ahead and regret it. I'm going to regret it if necessary. It's only one show, and if it works, then it's going to work on a regular basis. The number you can reach me at is 773-797-2409, 773-797-2409. Now, if you are listening, please hit the like button. Hit the subscribe. If you are listening, please subscribe to the network. And if you're listening to the show, share and tell a friend to tune in. This entire podcast, it's about me and you. It is definitely about me and you. So, if me and you engage, we can potentially answer some questions that we all potentially have. We can resolve some problems that we all potentially have. And we can move forward if you like. That's the ultimate goal. To uplift, enhance, engage, uplift, and enhance. That's the ultimate goal. Now, what I want to do first and foremost is acknowledge a newly transitioned ancestor. He goes by the name of Bob Gibson. Bob Gibson. I have a sports show in which I engage about sports on a regular basis, and me, Big Illinois, and Joe from Houston. We'll probably talk about this again Tuesday, but I want to acknowledge the ancestor, newly formed ancestor, Bob Gibson, because back in the day, a lot of athletes had certain things on their mind, and it was against the rules, so to speak about those things. You would be ostracized, you would be minimalized, or it just wasn't worth the smoke. And, a lot of people, well, you should have said it. Most of those people that talk about what people should have did actually ain't doing a damn thing but running their mouths, so to hell with those people. But I just want to take a second to acknowledge Bob Gibson. And one of the facts that I'm going to give you about Bob Gibson has nothing to do with his baseball career. It has something to do with his teammate. First and foremost, Bob Gibson was born 10 years after the great El Malik El Haj Shabazz, a.k.a. Malcolm X, from the same town. So there has to be some form of symmetry there. Another thing is this. Bob Gibson had a teammate by the name of Kurt Flood. And with that teammate, he made a conspicuous statement once upon a time. He's an ancestor as well, rest in peace. The great Kurt Flood is the reason LeBron James makes as much money as he can make, and all those guys in the NBA, NFL, and everywhere else who exercise their right as free agents. That comes from the great ancestor Kurt Flood. But once he was being interviewed, and he made the statement about a political angle, and he's what they would call a race man. He was always sticking up for the community. And the great Kurt Flood made the statement, I'm proud of who I am, and I'm down for my people. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. But I don't think we should talk about supremacy either way. And when he said that, it seemed kind of conspicuous. But the reason he said that is because the great ancestor, Bob Gibson, had taken him to a Nation of Islam meeting. Another thing, 100 years into baseball history, they gathered all the great baseball players, and they were supposed to meet up at the White House. And they were supposed to glad hand with then President Richard Nixon. Now, anybody who knows Richard Nixon, you understand that Richard Nixon was not a fan of our community. Let's just keep it as politically correct as possible. But Bob Gibson got to the door in which they were supposed to go in and then glad hand and smile and take pictures. And he couldn't stomach the thought of going into a room with Richard Nixon and saying, hey man, yada yada, I'm glad, and do a whole lot of skinning and grinning, as they called it back in the day. So what he did was turn around and go out to where the buses were that gave them a ride to the White House. Guess who he saw out at the bus? Shout out to Dr. Greg Carr and Sister Karen Hunter. Jackie Robinson. And that was one of the first times, he speaks about this in his autobiography, in which that he's actually had a conversation with Jackie Roosevelt Robinson. And after that conversation, he realized that him and Jackie Robinson walked on the same side of the street, civically, community-wise. And this lets you know that just because you are not out front and putting yourself out there as a spokesman of the community does not mean you're not doing the work. Does not mean that you're trying to build pride. It does not mean anything. It's just not who you are. Your job may be to hand out pamphlets. Your job may be to do a lot of things, and speaking up and speaking out may not be your job. So please, when you see athletes, entertainers, or whoever not speaking up, the one name that prominently comes to mind is Michael Jeffrey Jordan. That does not mean that they're not doing things behind the curtain. So I want to acknowledge one newly transitioned ancestor, Bob Gibson, and the rest of the ancestors as well. But I felt that was something that a lot of people needed to hear, because all you're going to hear about is how hard he threw a basketball, how he played with the Harlem Globetrotters, and how he did a whole lot of things that don't really mean a damn thing to us, but it means a lot to people in sports. I wanted to give you a piece of history about one of our newly transitioned ancestors that you could take pride in, not just because he could throw a ball or he could jump or shoot a basketball. But with that being said, let me move forward. Now, as I move forward, I look at the State of the Union, and I hear a lot of people with this hold your vote and without no agenda. The whole rigmarole that everybody seems to have grabbed hold to. And I'm going to ask everybody who will ever hear this and who's listening right now, be a voice, don't be an echo. And I'm going to say that again, just in case it goes past you. Be a voice, don't be an echo. See, it's easy to say things that other people have said over the last 300, 400, 500 years. And man, I sound smart. And man, you may be even compelled to say something that I've heard somebody say that you think I came up with. Because a lot of stuff, I'm just let you know, a lot of stuff that you give me credit with, like, man, rap, he was on point. I got that from somebody else. So instead of being that guy, let's just not be that guy. Let's be better than that guy. Let's not just be somebody who's saying a lot of things that sound cool. Let's be the guy who makes people want to get up and do. Let's be what is known in the African traditions as a jolly, a person who inspires. And again, back to not being an echo chamber, because it's easy to be an echo chamber in the world that we live in today. It is extremely easy to be that. We regurgitate things that sound like they're smart. We read things from certain books that sound like, hey man, that's a good move right there. And a lot of that stuff are not good moves. It's just good moves on the surface. Because if you're going to quote something from a book, my personal opinion is you need to know who the author of the book is. Because if that author wrote that book that sounds really good in a poor spirit, now you've put a poor spirit into the universe. And that's why I'm asking people, don't be an echo chamber. Be your own voice. Make your own noise. And if you can't make noise, you can make noise in a lot of ways. You don't have to speak and make noise. Because if you speak and make noise, and you end up sounding like a damn fool, now whatever information comes from you, good, bad, or indifferent, will be received in that fashion. And that's why I ask people, don't just I understand that a lot of people have good intentions in regards to what they're doing, potentially good. It sounds like good intentions. But when their feet are held to the fire, and I've watched this several times over the last few weeks, they end up looking and sounding like damn fools because they have put zero work into the efforts in which they are trying to do. This whole reparations thing, this whole black agenda thing, this thing is 157 years old. So if you are going to take on the mantle of doing what you have to do for your people, I'm going to need you to look backward to go forward. Sankofa is the African terminology for that. Sankofa, to look back in order to go forward. So, and I understand you may be fed up, you may be tired, but I'm going to ask this question. I'm going to continue to ask this question as long as I do my shows and do shows about things of this nature. Can you point to a period of time, and before we say a system doesn't work, before we challenge anything, can you point to a period of time in which the people that look like me and you have dedicated as a group, a total group, not for a couple years, not for a couple days, not for any short period of time, can you point to an extended period of time in which our community dedicated to the system, 10 fingers, 10 toes every time it comes up, and then it didn't work? If you can crack your brain and say, yeah, we did it during this period as a group or as a large group, because, hey, man, everybody don't follow anything. And that's just the way the world works. If you expect everybody to follow everything, even if it's an awesome thing, that's never going to happen. I want you to understand, you can go back in time as far as Jesus. Everybody didn't follow Jesus, and people universally think Jesus is a good dude. Oh yeah, that was the way to go. Jesus, that was the way to go. And everybody didn't follow him. Some people signed up to help him die, help them right into the grave. Everybody didn't follow Malcolm X. Believe it or not, as awesome as we think Malcolm X and Martin King are, and know they are, most people were like, hey man, they need to shut up. They messing things up for us, man. They stirring up the crazy white folks. A lot of people are just scared. So when you don't look at things in the present and say, hey, we could have did it then and we could have did it there. Just my point is, if you are going to knock something, I'm gonna need you to organize and put yourself in a position. And then once you put yourself in that position, then you'll see if what you're saying is valid, what you're saying needs some work, or if you need to add something to us to make it work. So when people tell you don't vote, they don't have no black agenda and things of that nature, I'm going to ask you to ask those people, if possible, they may be celebrities on TV,